What is up guys, KevinJSI with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles Future Connected. Now, in my last video I talked about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and I explained why I think it's one of the best games on the Switch and it's an easy 10 out of 10 for me. Future Connected though is a little bit of a different story. So I'm going to go right into the review and I'm going to start off by talking about the gameplay. So the pros of the gameplay is that it's basically the same as the main game, and I love the gameplay in the main game. There are small differences that I'll get into a little later, and I'll explain why I liked them or didn't really like them. But one thing I did like a little bit about the gameplay is that you really are forced to rely more on strategy in battle because they got rid of skill links and your gems are limited, especially with your equipment. Now, I actually have a lot of cons with Future Connected. I think that it's fine gameplay. It's just that comparing it to the original, which I think was as close to perfect as you can get, there are a lot of things that you can find that really aren't as good as they are in the main game. So right off the bat, there are only 4 characters, so with less characters and with less options, gameplay can become a little bit staler faster because you can't really be as creative. To continue on that, when you're building a team in the game, at least this is what I do, you usually go for 1 attacker, 1 tank, and 1 healer. So in the main game, your healer was usually Charla, but then you had multiple options for everyone else. Your tank could be Riki or Ryan, and then your attacker usually was Shulk, Melia, Dunban, Fiora, one of them. But because there are less characters and less options, you're almost forced to choose the healer and forced to choose the tank. And then that only leaves 1 more slot for the attacker, and that's either Shulk or Melia. To continue off that, I do not like the Pawn Specters at all. The most entertaining thing about the Pawn Specters is that when you get all 12 of them and they follow you around, it's kind of funny. But besides that, in the actual game, I feel like it takes away from the strategy that chain attacks were, because when you were building a team for a chain attack, you'd have to decide on the order, like make sure the first person does break, next one does topple, last one does daze, or this person puts it to sleep, next person attacks it, this last person puts it to sleep. So you'd actually rely on the order a lot more. But for the Pawn Spectre attacks, it's basically you just get 3 options. I don't think I used the heal one once. To be honest, it's if you're fighting 1 enemy, you use the attack one, and if you're fighting multiple, you use the daze one. And there's not much more thinking that goes beyond that. It's very simple. I don't think that the game benefits at all from making the chain attacks simpler by using the Pawn Spectre attacks. Another thing, while I did say that it is funny, out of battle, to have 12 no-pawns following you around, in battle, it is very distracting. And out of battle, you can turn them off and have them not follow you, but in battle, you can't. A lot of times, it can be extremely confusing when there's 12 little no-pawns running around in the middle of your battle, and to be honest, I didn't figure out what any of them did because I just didn't think they had that big of an impact, and altogether, the Pawn Specters were just not really a good addition to the game. And they actually reminded me of another similar game that had all-out attacks.
For real?
Huh. And then lastly, this is one of the bigger problems I had with it, with Nene and Kino. They were basically just Charla and Ryan, and I kind of was hoping that they would have a more unique moveset than just copying exactly what Charla and exactly what Ryan had. There are a lot of cons with the gameplay simply because all the pros I talked about in the Xenoblade Chronicles review, so just in comparison to the main game, it is definitely worse. Now, the story is where I have a lot of my problems with. To begin, I'll talk about the pros. At first, I was actually kind of disappointed that only Shulk and Melia would return for Future Connected, and that they would add these 2 random no-pawns out of nowhere, but I actually really grew to like Nene and Kino. I thought that having 2 no-pawns on your team was actually interesting because in the main game you don't get any interactions between 2 no-pawns, it's only Riki. So having 2 of them I think was extremely interesting for sure. I also did like how they chose to focus on Melia as a character, and they even continued to develop her and showed how she's growing to fill the role as the Empress and becoming a leader. Because in the main game, she didn't really get the same amount of attention, I felt, as a lot of the other characters. So I think it's great that they chose to focus on her in the side story. And to continue off that, Tyrea, I think, was also a great addition to the side story, simply because they took a character from the main game and then they added them into Future Connected, and it's a character that we really didn't get to know much about, but they were able to implement them in Future Connected, and I think that was great. And also, same thing with a bunch of other minor characters like Teal'c and Banna. Both of them being implemented into Future Connected, I think, was great, and a great callback to the regular story. Now, those are my pros, but the con list gets a little bit long. To begin, I kind of felt that Shulk was almost out of place in Future Connected. He didn't really have much to do. I mean, the story focused on Melia, and I understand that that was the point of it, to focus on Melia, but Shulk kind of just felt like he was there. I just think that not enough attention was given to him. I don't think he grew at all as a character during Future Connected, which is fine because Shulk already had his growth through the main game, but I think that if they spent a little bit more time on Shulk, it could have been better. To continue, a lot of the side characters who weren't from the main game, I thought were just simply uninteresting. Like, I had to write them down because I don't remember the names of these characters because that's how uninteresting they were. Maxis and Radzam, their little conflicts going on, I understand how it helped reinforce that theme that, you know, we have to work together, it doesn't depend on what race we are, we work together. And that was good. I liked that theme, but I just was not invested in that mini conflict they had, and the outcome was extremely predictable, unfortunately. Now, this is another extremely big problem. Gallagher, what was he even doing there? He was just this creepy character they showed in like 3 scenes. He shows up at the beginning and then he just spies on them. And then he goes and blows up research because he wants the half Ham, half High Entia race to prevail? I just don't think that makes much sense, really, at all. I mean, if they spent a little bit more time developing his character and explaining why he has those feelings, I think the game could have definitely benefited from that. But in the end, he just kills himself. And I feel like that goes almost against the entire theme they were going for. They were going for the theme that we have to learn to, you know, accept others and we are all one race. And then this dude refuses to believe that, so he kills himself? It just seems so out there and doesn't really connect to the theming of Future Connected at all. Lastly, what the heck was the Fog King even doing there? They did not go into the Fog King at all, the entire Future Connected. All they did was just say he came through this portal thing in the sky from like a different dimension, but they didn't explain why he was there. They didn't explain how he got there besides through the portal. They didn't explain his motive or anything like that. It was just this fog thing came, screwed up Alchemoth, and here we are now. But because the villain had no depth, it was just almost seemed rushed. That they didn't really know what bad guy to do, so they just made up some random fog dude and just called it a day. And that is one of the biggest problems with Xenoblade Future Connected. Overall, it just felt like a rushed game. They tried to almost do too much, and then in doing so, they didn't do it well. One of the things that I definitely think Xenoblade Future Connected did better than the original, this is one of the only things I think it did better than the original, is the quiet moments. I loved the quiet moments. I mean, each of them were like 5-minute long cutscenes where we really got to know a lot about the characters, and it really gave us a lot of information about Nene and Kino, which I thought was really great, because in Xenoblade Chronicles you get those affinity link connections, but the fact that they chose to actually voice act all of the quiet moments, and when you play a video game, it's very different reading it compared to actually hearing the characters say it. I think that hearing the characters say these things adds a lot of depth to what they're saying. That's my take on Xenoblade Chronicles Future Connected. In the end, it was a fine addition to the main story. It was okay, and that's fine. It was an okay game. I mean, it might be unfair because I'm comparing it to the main game, Xenoblade Chronicles, which is one of the best games I've ever played, but overall, solid 7 out of 10. Xenoblade Chronicles Future Connected is a solid 7 out of 10. Thanks guys for watching. KevinJSI out.